Keith Wilson, you don't need much of an introduction. Thanks for coming on the show today. And you've got a lot of things that, well, let's just say I know a few things about what's going on right now, but you probably know more of the legal end of what's going on and a better explanation than probably a lot of people have been giving. There's a lot of people saying this and that about a lot of things that they just don't know what they're talking about. And I'm not saying like people are deceiving other people. I think that there's just like a misunderstanding on a lot of these fronts. So two big things I want to get into tonight. And that one of them is, do you even own your property if you bought a house, especially if you live in British Columbia? And then the other thing is Western separation. Alberta wants to, a lot of people in Alberta want to become an independent nation. And I think these are two really, really important topics, especially right now in the Canadian landscape, but not just the Canadian landscape. I'm a dual citizen, Canada, US, and I'm concerned about all of the above. So where do you want to get into this first, Keith? Where would you like to start?
Do you want to start with the BC property rights crisis?
Absolutely. I live in British Columbia myself, and I have people who are blocks. I have friends of mine who are blocks away from where this decision was made. So first and foremost, okay, what I know about it is a decision was made at the Supreme Court level on title claims or title land claims. Is that what it is? And people have been saying on both sides, oh, it's not going to do anything. And then people are now like not being able to renew mortgages and stuff because of what's happening legally. What is actually happening legally?
So we're talking about the Cowichan decision, and it's a decision of the Superior Court of British Columbia that was released this past summer. And in that case, there was a claim made by a number of First Nations, including the Cowichan, that a chunk of Richmond, British Columbia, the city of Richmond, that is owned by some of its private homes, residential, some of it's owned by the city itself, and other is, I think, the major distribution center for Canadian Tire, other fulfillment centers, warehouses, light industrial businesses are all located in this area. And what the court ruled was that the Cowichan, as amongst the competing tribes, Cowichan demonstrated that it was actually them that used to use this land 100 plus years ago, and that they had Aboriginal title. So then the court had to say, okay, well, I've just determined that there's Aboriginal title. The Crown, the British Columbia government, granted fee simple titles to the homeowners, to the golf course, to Canadian Tire, to all of these businesses, and to the city of Richmond. How do I deal with this? I've got fee simple title. So when you own,
can you explain what that means? I have no idea what a fee simple title is.
It's lawyer talk and indefeasibility and stuff. I'll break it down. So when you say you own your land, you own your home, that means you own the place where your business is. If you're a business owner, is you can go to the British Columbia Land Titles Office and you can pull a land title. And if it's you, Clyde, and you own a piece of property, let's say in Squamish, it will have your name on it, right? And that title gives you the highest form of property rights traditionally recognized in our country and in British Columbia. And we call that a fee simple interest. It's the highest form of interest. You're not a tenant that has a leasehold interest, for example. You're not someone who has a mere license to walk across the property or drive across it to get some back-to-back lot, like an easement. You have the highest form. You have property rights. You have the right of ownership, which includes exclusive possession, use, and alienation. You can sell it, lease it, bequeath it, gift it, whatever you want. Highest form of ownership is fee simple ownership.
And the right to ask your local government if you could build a shed or not. I'm joking on that. I mean, like property rights aren't exactly like property rights aren't something to shake a stick at in Canada, really. But
there was a time where you just went ahead and built stuff, and it's not that long ago, actually. At least in Alberta, it was in the 50s and even into the 70s. If you wanted to build something, you just built it. You didn't go and get a permit. You just did it. The good old days. In any event, so what's happened in British Columbia is the court ruled that Aboriginal title prevails over the fee simple title. The court ruled in the Cowichan case this past summer in British Columbia on unceded land, and it's an important qualifier, and I'm going to get into that in a minute and put up a graphic to help everybody understand it. On unceded land, if a First Nation can establish that they have Aboriginal title to that land, then the Crown, the BC government, the Crown in the right of British Columbia, the court says, didn't have the legal right to give that homeowner a title, did not have the legal right to give that business a land title. The land title is invalid and the Aboriginal title wins out. So that's huge. And various law firms in British Columbia all put warnings up and did commentaries on their websites. You can search it saying, this has called into question the validity of land titles in British Columbia, not just in Richmond. Well, why is that? Because the court laid out principles, and the principles the court laid out in Cowichan are that if a First Nation establishes they have Aboriginal title and it's on unceded land, then it prevails over any fee simple title. Well, okay, can you bring up the map of ceded lands link?
Map of ceded lands. Okay.
Under
where would that
property
be?
rights.
Oh,
It's
okay.
Yeah,
right there. Yeah.
Boom. So what's really interesting, if you scroll down, there'll be a map below.
There you are.
Yeah. So that map, you see the yellow?
Yeah.
That's all
see that
unceded.
all here. Basically all of British Columbia.
Right. So
wow.
Most of British Columbia. Now, what's interesting is many parts of British Columbia are subject to overlapping claims, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. So you have multiple First Nations saying, one First Nation says, no, that part of Abbotsford was our territory. And then another First Nation says, no, that was ours. And then a third one says, no, you guys are both wrong. It was ours. That happened in the Cowichan case. They had to, the judge first had to decide which of the First Nations had a better claim. So look at where Alberta and Saskatchewan are on that map. That line's not following a provincial boundary. We're all green, right?
Right.
So this decision doesn't affect Alberta and British Columbia and most of the other parts of the country that are green and that are brown.
Post-Confederation treaties. So what does that entail?
So ceded land means it is treaty land. So all of Alberta is covered by 3 treaties, Treaty 6, Treaty 7, and Treaty 8. And they were negotiated and executed in the 1880s. And in those treaties, the First Nations agreed in return for the Crown, the King, the government, making promises and giving things to the First Nations, that rights that they still have today, and entitlements to money and other things, and hunting and fishing and so on, and reserve lands and schooling, that they would give up any right or title that they have to those lands. But those treaties, other than the Douglas Treaty and a few others covering part of Vancouver Island, there's no treaties in British Columbia. There's very few. And so British Columbia has been this unceded territory subject to all these competing First Nation claims. The numbers vary, but apparently 130% of the land base of British Columbia is being claimed by First Nations. And the reason why it's more than 100 is because a number of places have multiple overlapping claims. So the impact of the Cowichan decision is tectonic. It's a tidal wave. It calls into question, if you are living in a part of British Columbia that's in yellow, then you're on
the whole thing,
territory.
basically.
Well, the Peace River block, right? So
Okay.
up near I'm drawing a mental blank, but on across from Grand Prairie into that area where it's still flat in British Columbia, it's similar to Alberta. They traditionally call that the Peace River block. If you get
Mhm.
up into that part of British Columbia, that's under one of the treaties that covers Alberta. But other than that, and the odd little spot treaty here and there, British Columbia is unceded. And therefore, if there's no treaty in place and a First Nation claims it, and they establish that they have Aboriginal title, that they used to use the land way back when, and it was theirs, then all they have to do is bring an application to the court. The entirety of the city of Kamloops and the surrounding area and valleys are all subject to a similar claim that's currently before the courts, where a First Nation is claiming they have Aboriginal title to the entirety of the city. So if you own a home in Kamloops, and the court rules that there's Aboriginal title and they follow the Cowichan precedent, then you could have your title invalidated. Now, what's happening when some of the property owners that have land where the Cowichan decision was decided in Richmond have gone to the bank's like, to renew a mortgage there, or to sell and buy, they're like, yeah, no, it's okay. We're not, no, thank you. We're good. We don't want to get involved in this mess, because what security do they have? So what the court said was, the court stayed its own decision. And I think it was for a year and a half or 6 months or something. It doesn't matter, for a period, several months, with the view that the province and the Cowichan will enter into some kind of negotiation. So what does this mean? Well, if the provincial government steps in and says, all right, we're going to pay you, Cowichan, to solve this problem and have you give up your claim to these lands, and we'll give you a cash settlement, right? The taxpayers step in. Well, if that's the method of solving it, the value of the real estate in British Columbia is in the trillions.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. You can't do that.
Right,
No.
because it's going to be the taxpayer. It's going to be the homeowner effectively bailing himself out, paying for his property twice, right? So there would have to be this massive cash call by the BC government, maybe helped out by the federal government. Will no doubt lean on Alberta to pay for it, like we pay for most everything else in the country, and start cutting checks to settle all these claims.
So before we get into too many of the solutions, where I want to,
There's not many. Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So what I want to discuss though is, like, where's the discrepancy? Why is it that you called this? You said that it was going to be this case, and then when it came down to it, they made the decision. They we have people that tried to refinance a mortgage, get denied. People aren't able to sell their properties. There's nobody wants to buy in those areas. Where's the discrepancy there? Where's the discrepancy between the naysayers and how you had it right?
Well, so there's two things. Let's just pause for a minute.
Okay.
The 2 weeks ago, the BC Court of Appeal released a decision relating to disputes brought by First Nations over mining claims that were granted for resource development in the interior and northern parts of the province. And the Court of Appeal, BC Court of Appeal, struck down all the mining claims. So they're invalid. And they're invalid because they were obtained without First Nations consent. Okay. All right, wait a minute. What's going on here? So you'll notice that the Conservative Party of British Columbia and others are saying, we have to repeal DRIPA, DRIPA, which stands for the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was, just pause for a minute. I know I'm taking everybody to school here, in terms of law school, so to speak.
Well, no, this is important because I think John Rustad tweeted today, the leader who just stepped down. He in defense of, like, not knowing what was going on when he voted.
Well, I called him out on it. So
okay.
I called him out on it, and he wrote, I wrote what, 2 little tiny sentences, very short, and then he wrote an essay. So let's get to that. Yeah. So what happened was, in 2019, the British Columbia government said, we're going to adopt the UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And I'm like, you guys can't do that. You're going to bring your resource development to a stop, right? And I started tweeting about this back then. And so sure enough, they adopted the UNDRIP through DRIPA. And one of Article 32.2 of DRIPA and UNDRIP says that before any activity occurs, resource activity or land use decisions are made, resource allocations, resource approvals are made on any area of land traditionally used by First Nations in British Columbia,
which is
you have to get full and informed consent. So they have a veto. Wow. And that legislation passed in 2019 unanimously. Every BC politician voted for it. My head was exploding, right? Like, you guys have any idea what you just voted for? And what's remarkable about it, sometimes acts are really hard to read. This one's 2 pages within a schedule. It's 2 pages. And it clearly says, this is the legislation to make DRIPA, the law of British Columbia, and all other laws of British Columbia shall conform with this. So that was 2019.
All other laws
of British Columbia, are subservient now to this. It's the highest form of law in British Columbia. So I'm like, this is going, and so I started tweeting about it in 2020 in particular, just as we were going into
just clear something up for me here. How can they just legislatively pass something like this at a vote and not go to like a referendum? If you're going to put the supreme ultimate law of the land and redefine every other law that goes along with it or is subsequently under it, how are they not doing this in a direct democratic way?
Well, what's worse is the MLAs all said they weren't doing what the word said they were doing. And I had arguments with some of them back in the day, and some Aboriginal leaders said, oh, no, it won't give us a veto because I talked to the minister and he said that's not how it works. I'm like, well, did you read the words? There's not many of them. They're pretty plain. It says you're getting a veto. Like, why would you believe the minister when the words say opposite and they're clear? Like, just crystal clear. I would screenshot it and highlight it in yellow. Like, these are the words. Anyhow, so in 2021, during the lockdowns in the dark period of dystopian government overreaction to COVID, EB brought in an amendment to the Interpretation Act in British Columbia, further implementing DRIPA, and said every decision that is made under every statute has to be made in compliance and follow DRIPA. Well, somebody applied for mining rights and stake mining claims under whatever resource statute in British Columbia. They didn't get the consent of the First Nations. Any one First Nation could say, nope, veto, sorry, you're not doing it. They didn't go through that process. I'm not saying they would even got yeses. And they took it all the way to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal said, yeah, no, DRIPA's clear. The direction that, and EB's blaming the courts. And I'm going to defend the courts here. The courts did exactly what the politicians told them to do. The DRIPA legislation and Section 8.1 of the Interpretation Act, passed by the legislature of British Columbia, directed the courts to ensure and provide oversight that no resource and land use decisions are made in British Columbia unless First Nations consent. And there was no consent, so they said it struck down. So now there's these calls, and you'll see it in the legacy government-funded media, as well as on social media and opposition MLAs, that your provincial Conservative Party has a petition to repeal DRIPA. Well, okay, great. Good idea, because it's just crazy. It's aspirational legislation it's aspirational concepts that should never be made law. It's just a terrible idea. Professor Party wrote about this back in the time. Him and I and about 2 others were the only legal commentators saying, do you guys understand what you're doing here? This is going to come around and bite you really, really hard. I thought it would happen sooner, but I am not surprised at all about what has happened. So you can fix, though, the good news is it's easy to undo the Court of Appeal decision by repealing DRIPA, which they should do, because it makes no sense to give any one group an absolute veto on every land use and resource planning decision in a province. You're going to bring the place to a halt. You're going to invite extortion. Full stop. Right.
So it's as easy as that. You can just straight up
that
repeal
solves.
it.
So, but here's what started happening a couple of weeks ago. The politicians. So just to be clear, if they repeal DRIPA, and they should, it was a terrible idea to put that in law. If you read DRIPA and the UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, it reads things like, on every Monday, we shall have puppies and sunshine, right? On every Tuesday, we shall have freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. And whenever someone has a chance to be nice to someone, they will be nice to someone. Like, it's aspirational stuff that you don't put into hard, substantive law that results in prohibitions and denials. Mm-hmm. So it should have just been left as an aspirational document, not made law. Anyhow, so you got like Cowichan,
like something that would be toothless, like kind of like the land acknowledgements that are just kind of condescending if you actually think about it. People are making these land acknowledgements.
They're so bizarre. It's like you just feel like stopping. So, well, then are we giving it back to them? Like, what are we doing?
No, but then okay, it's a funny question. I don't know the answer to it, but you could answer this. Would the natives get a veto on UNDRIP if it's repealed?
No, because the legislature is supreme. Yeah,
and then the question after that, would they start calling everybody in government Indian givers? I had to.
Well, no, they issued a press release yesterday or the day before saying that there's no way that DRIPA can be amended or repealed, and they said it's totally wrong, and we have these rights, and you can't go back. So
wait,
you can look that up.
This?
Some council of First Nations of British Columbia. I don't know their proper name, but they issued a press release and Legacy Media covered it, and I read the press release. But okay, so hang on. I know this is all crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy. So
remember about Cowichan, the Cowichan case, right? And the ruling that Aboriginal title, if it's unceded land, once established, your fee simple title is invalid. That the Aboriginal title prevails over your fee simple title, okay? And that principle applies to everywhere there's unceded land, and everywhere there's a land claim. That means just about all the area in yellow on the map I put up, right? And in some cases, multiple overlapping. Vancouver's just saturated with overlapping claims, right? And even Squamish and, where you are is covered by one right now as well. So the politicians started saying, we have to repeal DRIPA so we can fix Cowichan. And I'm like, oh, you guys, no. Yes, you need to repeal DRIPA. That will fix this mining resource veto, land use veto that you created yourselves by unanimously passing DRIPA. That will fix that problem. Okay. But, and just as pause, there still is a duty to consult First Nations for the traditional territories. That emanates from Section 35 of the Constitution. I'm not saying you run roughshod over people or anything. It's just, they just have messed it up so bad in BC. But that'll fix this giving every First Nation a veto over every land use and every resource development approval. It will have zero effect on the property rights crisis created by Cowichan, which, by the way, the Wall Street Journal just did a big story on 2 days ago about, does British Columbia still have property rights, ? Was the headline. Not a headline you would want as a British Columbia citizen to see in being read by the investors on Wall Street.
That's right.
So what I've pointed out to the MLAs, and quite directly and somewhat bluntly at times, that stop, I say to them, okay, great. Repeal DRIPA. Now what are you going to do to restore property rights and fix Cowichan? And they're like, what are you talking about? It wasn't decided. So Cowichan was decided on the basis of a series of escalating landmark decisions from the Supreme Court of Canada. That tweet, can you just bring that tweet back up that you just had, if that's possible?
The one with the map on it.
With the map on it. it's the text above. And we won't go into it in detail. I just want people to know where they can go if they look into my timeline. Now just scroll up a little bit.
Yeah.
There. So see all those bullets? So there
Yes.
I list. So Calder was a decision in 1973. I studied that when I was in Osgoode Hall Law School, my first year of law school, 35 years ago. And then we had in 1982, Section 35 of the Constitution come in, entrenching Aboriginal rights in the Constitution. And I put Calder together with that Section 35, and I went, oh boy, this is going to progress to the point where Aboriginal title is going to prevail over fee simple title. I thought it was going to happen way sooner. I didn't think it was going to take over 30 years. So each one of those decisions, and we won't go through them, but
so none of this has to do with DRIPA. This is completely separate.
Exactly. That's my point that I'm trying to make. So, you're a mechanic, right? A ratchet, you turn it one, it goes click. So Calder was a click. You don't have to, this is good. Our screen's good. The next decision was another click. And you also know you can't go back, right? Once that ratchet goes, I mean, subject to pushing the button and doing that or flipping the thumb, right? It goes.
Well, a better analogy is like I have ratcheting wrenches.
Right.
They don't reverse. You have to flip them upside down to go the other way.
Yeah, so a ratcheting wrench.
And
exactly.
If you back yourself against something, there's no going back. And you can only get tighter and tighter and tighter, and it gets worse and worse for you.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'm going to make you my deputy of analogies. That's a really good one. That's exactly what happened with each one of those decisions. And property rights were your hand stuck against the frame of the car underneath. And now we're stuck there. This is the natural progression. I was talking to Professor Party about this. And I'm a huge property rights proponent. I've always been a property rights lawyer throughout my career, right? And I'm not happy to report that property rights are in peril in British Columbia. It disturbs me to my core. But this is the logical progression of these landmark decisions from the Supreme Court. I think the judge in Cowichan got the law right. I'm not happy about that. It's just like when you take somebody's car apart and discover they got to, replace their transmission. You're not happy to tell them that, but that's the reality, right? So that's where, so how does British Columbia get back its property rights? I've thought a lot about this. And one way is for the provincial government, perhaps with funding from the federal government and maybe a really generous, ATM machine or a money tree, does cash settlements with all of the competing First Nation claims and buys them out. But where's the money going to come from?
There's no money for that. There's no money.
I did the analysis. I can't remember if it's 1 trillion or 2 trillion or 3 trillion, which is the value of the real estate in British Columbia right now, based on the assessment value from all the municipalities. Who cares? As soon as BC doesn't have $1 trillion, right? So in the meantime, their ability to resource development stopped because of DRIPA. So get rid of DRIPA so you can keep approving things and have people with jobs, hopefully, to earn value to pay taxes. So one way is to do this massive buyout. Wow. Another way is to rethink, have we gone too far as a country with Section 35 of the Constitution, and amend Section 35 of the Constitution? And what surprised me is, as I've been beating up some of the MLAs, like Rustad, your past leader, the Conservative, he was posting, repeal DRIPA and all that. And I said, okay, great, it won't fix Cowichan. And then he said something else. And I said, you voted for DRIPA. What's your solution to fix Cowichan, right? Or did you read it and stuff? So repealing DRIPA will not fix Cowichan. It is possible that an amendment to the Constitution to redefine and give more nuance to First Nations rights would be a way to address it. But that would require amending the Constitution. That would require
Section 38 of the Constitution.
35.
What's written, or sorry, 35. What's written there, and what needs to change?
It requires all governments. It entrenches Aboriginal rights. into the framework of the laws of the country. So any law passed by any government at any level, federal, provincial, municipal, that doesn't respect Aboriginal rights, treaty rights, as well as Aboriginal rights include treaty rights, including the duty to consult, the duty to accommodate, the honor of the crown, these things, then that law will get struck down. That was why at one point the Northern Gateway pipeline and another pipeline got struck down by the federal court because there wasn't sufficient consultation determined by the court. So they had to go back and do it again in terms of the duty to consult. So, but if that is the way forward to remove the rigidity of Section 35 to restore property rights in British Columbia, then you're going to be into the amending formula, which means you're going to have to get 7 provinces that have 50% or more of the population of Canada to agree, including the federal government and an act of parliament. Is the Carney government that's bending over backwards for First Nations at every turn and giving them more rights than they even have under the Constitution? For example, a veto right on this pipeline from Alberta under the MOU is not a right they have under the Constitution. They have a veto right under DRIPA, but if DRIPA is repealed, anyhow, it's just a mess. Some people have suggested, because they're pessimistic, I've seen this emerge on Twitter or X. It did not come from me, remarkably, but they've said another way to deal with this is if British Columbia secedes and becomes independent, then they can rewrite their own constitution. And that is true. That would be another way forward.
It's unbelievable. We don't get anything done. So I don't see, I just don't see much happening on this. Because, when seconds matter, the government's 5 minutes behind, right? Always
5 minutes, case. 5 days. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's like, I just don't see this happening before it really affects both industry, people's property, people's homes, the ability to get a mortgage, refinance, these kinds of things.
Headline in the Wall Street Journal: do property rights exist in British Columbia? ?
Well, they do for the natives.
That's true.
Yes. It looks like, and like, how is that even? Because I don't know how this works legally. How is this even a thing that was never considered originally when drafting the original Constitution and making Canada a nation of its own? In the United States, they thought about this stuff thoroughly. They thought about like other people making claims and things like that. Property rights are, you own your property. It's yours and yours alone. And we're going to make sure that there's no other institutions there that can step in the way of that. And for 300 years, the government's been trying their damnedest to bring in authoritarianism, in my estimate. And they've been having a hard time there. It seems in Canada, they found all these different back doors. Like what was the forethought in the process of drafting this in the first place?
Well, I think this is a good lesson, which is that virtue signaling should not be occurring in the same room that you're doing substantive law drafting. This is all virtue signaling, right? And it's a good example of where this woke ideology and always saying these pie in the sky nonsense stuff, when you bring them into the real world, they often have the opposite effect of what you were intending. And this is the part I find emotionally upsetting, is I support the concept of everybody getting along, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I support the concept, I think it's overblown, but to the extent it includes reconciliation. What is this doing for reconciliation? It's having the opposite effect. Mm-hmm. You couldn't do more damage to reconciliation than what's happening in British Columbia right now by telling all these people who work so hard in British Columbia because of the cost of real estate, particularly in the Lower Mainland. Like, that's an important part of the Lower Mainland's culture, is to work hard to aspire to landowners, to home ownership, right? There's a pride in ownership because people have to work so hard for it. Usually if it's a married couple one spouse's income goes to pay for the house in its entirety, right? You know what I'm
Mhm.
talking about? It's
Oh, I do.
incredible. So to then say to all these people, oh, guess what? Oh, there's 3 different First Nations that are now claiming our house, our property where it is, and one of them's going to win out, and we don't have title to our land anymore. What? You
all,
know,
all
so
because all because there's like loose word of mouth from people over generations that their great 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 grandpappy fished there once. Like this is
one of the, when you look at that, and don't bring it back up, but that email, that X post I sent you where I have the bullets of the cases,
yeah,
one of the cases was acknowledging that these binding decisions of great consequence can be made on the basis of oral history.
that's just
Um,
absurd to me. I
okay,
mean,
Clyde,
oral history. I mean, we all
Clyde,
played telephone,
let's do
right?
let's do a little test here. How many times have I been on your show? I didn't research this.
Yeah, and I'd have to go look it up. You've been on my show so many
Come on,
times.
no oral histories, man. This is rock solid.
Well,
You're being,
I
yes.
can't, I
I don't
couldn't
know.
give that
I'm
to
going to
you.
go first. I'm going to say 5 times. You know,
Well, no,
and
it's a hell of a lot more than that.
oh, see, well, there you go. That was a genuine answer. I wasn't trying to lie. Our our memories are so frail. As a litigator, you know, prepping witnesses that
Mhm.
lived the experience 2 years ago, in some cases 2 months ago, and trying to get that person to remember what they experienced themselves. So this notion that we can pass down authoritative information without a written language, and by just somebody remembering what someone told someone else, wow, that, there you go. There's another example of ideological extremist virtueness being translated into a world of consequence. And boy, is it happening in British Columbia right now. And it's very, very troubling. There's not an easy solution here. And I don't know. Pandora's box has been opened. The analogy I used was, you know, the genie's out of the bottle, and
Mhm.
I don't know how to get it back in, short of a payout, um, short of a constitutional amendment, short of a decision to completely redefine its constitutional structure as a province by following the lead of Alberta and likely Saskatchewan, and seceding and drafting your own constitution. So those are the only 3 things that I can see that are the likely paths forward, given the clarity of the landmark decisions from the Supreme Court of Canada combined with Section 35 of the Constitution.
So is there no thought or consideration to the because okay, there's a claim that natives use this land ages ago, eons ago. They have an oral tradition that pass it on. Say we take all that for at face value, but then we have a bunch of other people that came and put infrastructure on this land, built factories, built all these things, added tons of value to the property. The property is not wild wilderness anymore, right? Is there no consideration in the courts that you didn't build this, you don't get to just take it?
Well, that hasn't been litigated yet because this is the first time the court has brought all of these decisions together to make a ruling like this. Um, there is a concept in law called quantum merit, or unjust enrichment, um,
Okay.
where if I improve your land in mistaken belief that it's my land, and then you dispossess me of it, and I've made it better, that you need to pay me for the value of the improvement of it. So you could, but how is that really going to help? You know, I've even thought, what would the valuation be? Should the valuation be based on, if they're claiming that in the 1850s they were using this area of the Fraser River or this area of Squamish,
Mhm.
should the value, if there's a buyout, should it be based on what the value of the land would have been in Squamish in 1850, right? And then adjusted for inflation? Or, you know, or is it the present value, right? And then, you know, and then the EB government announced, what, 2 weeks ago, that the government's putting up $150 million to make available to the homeowners and the businesses to assist to backstop their mortgage renewals, right? Which was all over the news.
Well,
So
that'll only cover a little bit for a short period of time.
exactly,
It's
it doesn't
such a
even cover
band-aid.
the value of it's in billions of dollars of land, even in the area subject to Cowichan. So it's just a very, very difficult mess. Can you just we'll open up one other thing because it'll really help people assess their situation. If you look a link to interactive map of land claims.
Okay, I'll pull that up.
It's on, yeah, right there. So can you just, I don't know if you can play around with it, but if you just actually use your mouse and just click on one of those teardrops. One in the middle.
Oh,
Go
just
close.
click right
Yeah,
on them.
yeah. I know it's
Oh,
hard
so
to use. Right there.
any one of
Right
them.
there.
Yeah.
That is. So you can go to this map. It's the BC Treaties Commission website. There's this interactive map. You can zoom in. I zoomed in on Squamish to see. You can move around the map and find you on Squamish there, and you'll see that it'll pop up as to what land claims are right there. That one right where your mouse. Click on it.
There's Garibaldi, and that's the
Yeah,
Squamish Nation.
so that's the Squamish claim. And then when you just move down to Vancouver there and then zoom in over top of Vancouver, if you don't mind, you'll see what I mean. Just
there's a
pause.
ton. There's a bunch of different ones.
You move your mouse back a bit. Anyway, you'll see these blue dots. Just go up a little higher. Elevate, raise up.
Oh, there's
the
blue
those
dots.
blue dots. That means there's
2.
multiple different claims.
Got you.
And some of them will say 3, 2, 3, 2, 7. Yeah. So it's overlapping claims. So you'll be able to go in there, see what land claims are currently available, are going on for the land where your home or your business is. And you'll also, on the right-hand side, once you click on it, it'll tell you the status, whether they're in negotiations, whether in litigation, whether in stage 1, 2, 3, 5 of treaty making. This is the other thing.
So I got something interesting to say here. So Whistler, for example, Whistler is just north of me, and Alta Lake drains out of both sides because there's an aquifer underneath.
Okay.
Right. So all those years later, when the natives came to Whistler, they didn't understand what an aquifer was. So they said, don't settle here, bad juju, like it's not good.
Oh, yeah, there's demons in this lake.
Yeah, there are demons in the lake. So let's not go there. But then, then some German guy comes over and he decides that that's going to be the place for the Olympics one day. And all this investment goes there. They build a highway there that never would have existed for any other reason except the fact that it was there. And all this time later, they're like, no, we always wanted it. It was ours. We settled there. And now they have a giant museum there that I thought was super ironic that they have a giant museum at a place where they thought that it was bad juju and they just did not want to live there. It's all craziness. Why do we go along with it?
Well, and so what I'm finding bizarre, I'm not from British Columbia, so I don't understand your politics, but it's like, these MLAs, I don't know, they probably put in an hour's worth of work a day, it seems, and that may be unfair to them, but they've been going, we're calling on the EB government to disclose where all these land claims are. And I'm like, there's an interactive website that you can go to. Your kid can show you how to use it on his iPad. Like, what? Seriously, you guys?
So they just can't even figure out anything.
I found this by doing a Google search. I just Googled BC land claim treaty map, and it came up immediately, and it's instant link, it's interactive, and it has all the information. And
so the MLR is like,
Keith, how come the EB government won't disclose where they are? It's like, there's an interactive website, sir, so.
But that just tells me they either they know that and they're just being.
That's what I wonder. And same as they also may know
it's
that repealing DRIPA doesn't solve it. So they're trying to blame it all on EB to get political points. And they will repeal or adjust DRIPA. And then the lawyers will be saying, and the banks will still be saying, well, it doesn't solve the property rights problem because it wasn't sourced in DRIPA. DRIPA is referred to in the Cowichan decision. Someone's going to write to me or write to you. It is obiter dicta. It is not part of the ratio decidendi. Okay, it's mentioned in passing. It's not the basis of the decision. One other point before we should probably move on. There's a recent decision out of the New Brunswick Court of Appeal, where half of the province of New Brunswick, half of it, a little more than half of it, is being claimed by a First Nation. Okay, as Aboriginal title.
Of course
And
it is.
yeah. Okay. Can you bring up that map again? Because here's the
will.
real fun part. The map of unceded lands.
Yeah, we got it right here. Oops.
Not that one. That's the
Not that one.
interactive.
This one right here.
This one, yeah. So anyway, so all of New Brunswick's being claimed, and what has happened is and one other place that's being claimed that I really actually do like is Ottawa. So all of Ottawa, all of the places, the House of Commons, the Supreme Court of Canada building, the Senate,
I hope they
all
get
of
that.
Ottawa, and
I
the
hope they
Ottawa
get that
region
before anything else.
by the Algonquin. So I asked myself, and all the residences and homes in Ottawa. So I asked myself, when the Cowichan decision gets to the Supreme Court of Canada, are the judges all going to have to recuse themselves because they have a conflict? Because if they vote in favor and Ottawa still unceded land subject to an outstanding land claim, they could be ruling on whether or not they get to keep their house. That's how messed up this is, right? So, what, are they all going to have to sell their homes ahead of time and move far enough away that they're not, like, what's going on here? It's such a mess. Anyway, so people are saying, oh, it's all okay. It's all okay because the New Brunswick Court of Appeal just issued a decision in the last few weeks where they said, no, to a first claim. They didn't. What they said, it was a purely procedural decision. What happened was, when the First Nations sued the provincial government and said, we own half of the province, including all of this land owned by Irving family and others, these forestry companies, these other industries and private landowners, the Irvings and all the other private landowners said, hey, we got to be party to this case. You can't go ahead and decide whether we're losing all our property rights without us being there. And the lower court essentially ruled that no, the claim is actually against the Crown and the right of Nova Scotia, or New Brunswick rather. So therefore, you don't need to be there. And then it went to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal said, no, that's wrong. You either have to have the people there whose property rights you're seeking to take participate in the trial, or you remove from the pleading, the statement of claim, the lawsuit, those impacted lands. And that's essentially what they ruled. Purely procedural. They did not strike down Aboriginal rights. They did not say that fee simple rights override. It was purely a procedural decision as to who has standing, what can be included in a pleading and what can't. So we're back to square one. We're in a really tough place, except for those places in Canada that have treaties, because we're ceded land, and the treaties say that the First Nations were releasing, relinquishing, transferring, assigning, giving up all of their rights now and forever into the future of this land to the government. So this is a problem for most of British Columbia, some places in Quebec, the Ottawa region, and some places in Eastern Canada, but the rest of the country's just fine, and this has no impact on us.
Looks like a couple of places in Yukon and none of it as well. Wasn't there like natives in Alaska trying to claim Canadian land? What was that about?
Yeah, there's that too. There's a couple of crossover claims going on that are still out there. I think even down at Tawasin, I think there's one as well. There's an overlap claim from a U.S. First Nation. So it's quite a difficult situation.
So this is why I made this hat, because one to make fun of Doug Ford, but to show what it's actually all about. It's the Canada is up for grabs hat, because it absolutely is. You can get those in the store right now. Go check them out. But yeah, Canada is up for grabs. It's not this like Canada's not for sale thing that we've been hearing about from the government. It's absolutely like people aren't sure if they're going to be able to own their own home that they've paid for.
That's the unfortunate reality, as the headline in the Wall Street Journal confirms. And it's a very difficult situation. And the BC politicians got some really heavy lifting in front of them, and they're going to have to do some very, very serious, careful thinking to see how they can potentially disentangle this. And I just don't see an easy path forward. Someone may find one, and I'll applaud them if they do, but I haven't been able to identify one to the extent I've been able to look at it.
Unbelievable. Before we move on to the next subject, Yukon Strong jumped in with and Yukon Strong, and
Yeah.
he jumped in with a chat here saying the authoritarian nightmare of Canada's charter must be abandoned for a modern constitutional republic with property rights and one rule of law for all mankind. I think this is alluding to what I heard Bruce Party recently talking about, that if you're gonna have laws, you can't have like some laws for these people and different laws for those people. I tend to agree with what Yukon Strong's saying here. What are the chances of that ever happening, though?
Well, it's just one of the frustrating things is, when I went to law school, we were taught initially that, and the aberration was this Aboriginal stuff, but that Lady Justice had a blindfold on, right?
Mhm.
And that it didn't matter whether you were male or the justice system isn't supposed to see you by your class, the quality of clothing you're dressed in, right? They're not supposed to judge you by your color of your skin or your gender or your height or your disability or your skills. They're supposed to judge you equally. That's the sense of justice. That's why what it feels like to live in a free country, a free and just country, is that you will be judged by your actions and only your actions, right? And boy, have we ever lost that, as the headlines confirm, and people are losing their minds. Oh, this sex offender, well, he's seeking asylum, and he could lose that. So yeah, I better, he's from Africa or he's from the Middle East, and I better not impose the same penalty I would on Tamara Leach or some other Canadian. This two-tier justice system is just so upsetting to so many Canadians, for sure. There's one other point I want to make before I get bombarded with comments and you get them. Some people have said on Cowichan that there's practice directives, and this is for real. There's practice directives that the federal government has given to the federal lawyers, and the BC government has given to the BC lawyers. And they basically said, when you're in a fight with a First Nation, you take one arm and you tie it behind your back, and then you close one eye, and you show up late. Like, you read these things, they're outrageous. They're just like, yield. It's part of reconciliation. Don't really fight them. So neither government advanced a number of defenses that could arguably have been used to try and get a different result in Cowichan and uphold property rights. There's two problems with that hopeful line of thinking. The first one is, an appeal is not a do-over, right? It's not a do-over. An appeal, you can't bring up new arguments. You can't, it's like writing an exam. When you wrote your mechanics exam, you don't get it. You give your answer. And if you believe your answer is right and your instructor was wrong, you can go to an appeal, right? And so
you can't bring up new arguments. None of that's allowed. This is news to me. I didn't know this.
Play games. If I've got a rich client and you're poor, I'm going to save a bunch of arguments and then bring them up at appeal just to grind you out, right? I'm going to grind you. There's lots of other reasons why, but that's just one that immediately comes to mind because I represent a lot of small people against wealthy people.
I didn't know this about the way the system
So you can't. It's not a do-over. The court's going to say, well, how can you say the lower court judge got it wrong when you didn't even make this argument in front of her, right? See what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's not a do-over.
So you'd have to call for a retrial. Yeah, you'd have to call for a retrial if you wanted to bring new arguments.
But if it's done, one and done, like our legal system needs closure, right? You got to wait for your next case. When you think a decision's wrongly decided and you're in this trap, you wait for the next case to come along of similar facts. And then you argue that court was wrong. That's how you do it. Happens all the time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
That
got
makes
cases
sense.
right now where the Court of Appeal made a decision on something, and I really think respectfully they got the law wrong. Has to do with the Surface Rights Act here. And I got a case, and I'm going to have to argue, with all due respect, I think the Court of Appeal got it wrong and explain why. And that the judge may agree with me, say, yeah, I think they did. And then that may get appealed. That'll cause the Court of Appeal to reconsider its decision and say, yeah, Wilson's right. We did get it wrong on that other case, and this is the law now. So that's how it normally is.
Okay.
So that's one thing. The other thing is the city of Richmond, it does not have a practice directive to its lawyers, like the federal government tells its lawyers to not fight hard, and the province tells its lawyers not to fight hard because it's part of reconciliation. Can't fight hard. That wasn't the case with the city of Richmond. So the city of Richmond advanced every single argument under the sun. They advanced the extinguishment argument. They advanced limitation period. They advanced latches. They advanced all of these different arguments. And the judge carefully went through them and said why they don't work anymore when I apply the case law that she was directed to apply from the Supreme Court of Canada, that ratchet, right? Her knuckles were right against the cross member with that
So
wrench.
she couldn't do anything.
Yeah. So in other words, it is true that the province and the federal government did not advance certain arguments that could have been a defense of property rights, but it doesn't matter because the city advanced those exact arguments that were allegedly missed, and she fully considered them and she rejected them all. Okay. So that's where I go, wow, I think she might have got this right. I'm not just the same way you're not happy to tell a customer, sorry, man, your transmission's shot.
Yeah.
But you're being realistic. That's what it is. And that's where I feel we're at. So I just wanted to clarify that about the defenses, and we should probably move on to
well, fair enough. Yeah.
Happy thing.
I don't want to keep you. I'll keep you all night if I can, but I know you got only so much time. So, okay. That's a crazy story. I hope people get a little more information out of that. I think that's very important for people to know. But now we've got this other thing, and this let's bring people's spirits back, because that one really tears you down. The spirits come back when you see something like what's happening in Alberta, and some reason to be excited. Actually, you have been working very hard with a number of other people to push forward for this idea of an independent Alberta. There's been pushback from some places that you would expect, some places you wouldn't expect. And there's a lot of effort towards this. Now, I've been bringing up I guess, I don't know if it's a statistics, but I read about this thing where, grassroots sort of movements that exceed 30% typically go on to be successful.
And every time you bring that up, you're corrected that the percentage is actually far lower.
Okay, is it actually far lower?
Way lower. Yeah.
So if you're hitting 30%, then you're really in good place on a grassroots movement kind of thing. Now, it's starting to take the effect of being a mainstream conversation now. Up until just recently, this has been fringe and on the sidelines of politics and whatnot. And now it's no, this is a contentious thing. There's court battles happening about what can and cannot be brought up as a question and all of this. Tell me where we're at now, because everybody's excited to hear how far this has come along now.
Well, where we're at now is in October of 2026. Alberta is going to vote for independence, and we're going to free ourselves from what has become a dystopian, oppressive federal government and a country of Canada that's unrecognizable to the one I grew up in. And the reason I say that is to start with, you'll recall that Canada is the only major parliamentary democracy in the world where the Supreme Court and the government have laid out a pathway, a legal process for a region, in this case, a province, to leave the country to become independent, to secede. Okay. Canada's completely unique. Other countries don't allow a region just to decide they're going to leave.
Are you
Canada
talking
does.
about the Clarity Act right now? Is that what
I'm
you're
talking about the 1998 Supreme Court of Canada decision in the Quebec reference case, where the
okay?
Supreme Court of Canada laid out the legal process. And the legal process is that if a province holds a referendum and a clear majority of the voters of the province vote for independence on a clear question, then that triggers a requirement for either the federal government, the other provinces, and the affected First Nations to enter into negotiations, in this case with the province of Alberta, which will be the government of Alberta, soon to be the government of the country of Alberta, for the terms upon which Alberta will leave Confederation and become a free, independent country. Or if those negotiations are not conducted in good faith, as they're required to be by the Supreme Court of Canada, it does not preclude unilateral international recognition of the new nation state, the new country of Alberta. So
which we're looking at
problem,
right now with basically the way the United States is signaling
yeah,
towards
and
what's
let's
been
go through this methodically.
okay.
So in Saskatchewan, in Saskatchewan and other provinces, it's completely up to the provincial government to decide whether they're going to hold a referendum. Alberta's different. Alberta has a referendum act, which allows the province to hold a referendum on independence. But we also have what's called the Citizen Initiative Act. And the Citizen Initiative Act allows citizens to come together, register a formal petition, and if they get a requisite number of votes in a specified period of time, that then obligates the provincial government to go to a referendum. So the citizens of Alberta are now in control of this.
And that could be
And
any question. That's just a referendum in general.
That's right. That's correct.
Okay.
So we've already had one. We've had referendums, for example, on whether Albertans want a change to daylight savings time. We've had a referendum on whether or not we want changes to equalization. So the Alberta Prosperity Project brought an application for a petition last summer for calling for a referendum on independence. And it got bogged down in the courts because of a sloppily drafted clause in the Citizens Initiative Act that should have never been there. It was a carryover from the Kenney days, bad drafting, made no sense. Things got bogged down in the courts, and the Smith government was watching in real time that its legislative intention for this act was not being achieved. And in Canada, we have the principle of parliamentary supremacy, which means a parliament or a legislature, provincial legislature, is supreme, and they have the keys to the lawmaking machine. So if the BC government thinks its legislative intention is not being achieved, for example, with DRIPA, it can repeal DRIPA. It can amend DRIPA at any time. The premier can ask the lieutenant governor to recall the legislature. EB could do it today and have them sit tomorrow on Christmas Eve. And, so the legislature happened to be sitting in October when this was all happening and into November. And so the Smith government said, look, we never intended for the courts to be controlling this. This is not what we had intended as our legislative intent. It's a carryover section. It's not properly drafted, doesn't reflect the intention of the legislature. We're elected by the people to make the laws. And so they amended the legislation to make clear what their intention was, which is that if citizens come together and apply for a petition, they're allowed to go do a petition. Mm-hmm. So that's what happened. So a new petition was filed after the legislature amended the Citizen Initiative Act through what's called Bill 14. And the Alberta Prosperity Project immediately filed a new application. And yesterday, the Elections Alberta, the chief electoral officer, approved the petition question at the initial phase of approval. His final decision is expected on January 2nd. And that will mean the Alberta Prosperity Project group will have 120 days to go out and get 177,000 signatures. And if they get 177,000 signatures on these official petition forms, not anybody can print these are official Elections Alberta forms, witnessed by a canvasser approved by Elections Alberta with a special badge and ID. If over 177,000 voting Albertans who are eligible to vote in elections sign, then that obligates the government of Alberta, this under Premier Smith, to hold a referendum. Now, the Alberta Prosperity Project has, I can't remember the exact number, but over 15,000 volunteers who want to be canvassers. We have over 200,000 people who have already pre-registered to say, as soon as it's go time, contact me, tell me where to go, I'll sign. So
Wow.
we got this in the bag. There's no uncertainty whatsoever. And we have until May 2nd to get 177,000 signatures, when we got over 200,000 people have already said they'd sign. And we've got over 15,000 people who want to go door to door and to hockey rinks and to malls and to rec centers and
Wow.
to car shows and to hockey games and set up booths and get signatures. So we're going to rock this. So we're going to get that number. So that means in October of 2026, there is going to be a province-wide referendum in Alberta on whether or not Albertans want to become independent and leave Canada and form our own country. And I am very confident that if we properly lay out the case for independence, I'm very confident as we continue to see the collapse of Canada and the failures of the liberals, the ideological eco-evangelists, as I call them. We're allowed to make straws in plastic bags and send them to the beaches, the beach restaurants in California and Florida, but we're not allowed to have straws in plastic bags in Canada. Like, wow. And we go along with this stuff. Anyway, I digress.
I was just down in Texas. I was there for a week with the family because we're out looking for our next home. Like that's what we're doing. And we stopped at all the different places you could, eat and buy food and buy stuff at. And everywhere we went, we're just like, oh yeah, I forgot plastic bags. Oh, I could have a fork with that. Oh, I can have a real straw. Oh, wow. Okay. Styrofoam cups.
My wife and I had to go to Florida for northern part of Florida, and we were sitting in a beach restaurant, and you're given your takeout or whatever, stuff you don't eat. You're given a plastic bag to. Well, they put it in the plastic bag here. You got to do it yourself. Yeah. They have actually customer service there. It's a really weird thing. You should try it. Actually, don't. Yeah. You'll be ruined as you come back to Alberta and Canada. But and we're having a plastic straw in our drinks as we can see a sign 20 feet over saying, "Avoid turtle nesting areas." Right. And then here in the middle of the prairies, -40. Oh, no, Mr. Wilson. Sorry. Keep your hands off the plastic straw. You could harm a turtle. Yeah, at a pet store or a zoo, maybe. Like, come on. It's just so crazy. And I don't know what's crazier is the fact that these governments do this stuff or that we go along with it.
We go along with it. That is the craziest part.
It's just
absolutely.
Insane. So let's get back to the good news. Yes. So here we are. It's go time. It's probably going to be starting right after New Year's. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a fundraising call because to cover your costs of your canvassers and all of the costs of collecting signatures and renting halls and doing all that, you can only use money that you collect from donors. after the petition is approved. So even though they changed the rules on this, so even though APP has some money from donors, they can't use it. So there's going to be requests for donors to help cover the costs of all the logistics involved and the computer softwares and everything that's going to be needed to monitor and track and get us over the line.
Okay.
And stand by, only be very careful. If you have bad handwriting or bad penmanship, please do not fill out the thing. There'll be someone there that's got really good, a penmanship. Let them fill out your name and your address, and then you sign it. They won't sign for you, of course. But so many signatures were disqualified on a recent petition because they were illegible, because, people just do everything typing and on their phones now. They don't know how to handwrite anymore. So keep that in mind. So now the heavy lift begins to educate those people who are on the fence and haven't yet decided whether or not independence is a good thing, and so on. So one of the things a number of groups are doing is we're encouraging people at this time of year of Christmas and the holidays and New Year's, where people tend to get out of their normal echo chambers and their normal bubbles, and they tend to mingle, and they tend to interact at family dinners where there's people with different politics and in-laws and all that stuff, to have the awkward discussion and bring up independence. Can you play a video if it's in the link I gave you?
Oh, absolutely can. Yeah.
Yeah. So bring the funny one up. It says, talk about it at Christmas, Xmas there, and
Okay.
turn the sound up. And it's only 25 seconds. Listen to the very end. It's quite funny.
I just need to find it. Is that towards the top?
It's in the list. Yeah, it's in the list. It'll be the
Talk
third
about
one
it
down.
at Christmas. There we go.
Yeah, talk about Christmas. So this is from Rise of Alberta.
I think I've seen this one. Is the music? I don't know if the music I can play it, but
yeah, it is. Don't play music.
Okay, well that's the imagery
there. Sorry, it is. It's some AC/DC something or something like that. So yeah, sorry, I didn't realize that. Thanks for bringing that up.
But anyway, person. Talk about Alberta.
Be that person. And so the guy sits down at the table. He says something like, "So, did you hear that there's going to be a vote on Alberta independence this year? Can I talk to you about independence?"
I know it's the blue hair and the pink hair
and everything lose their mind. And so anyway, we've got a few of those videos out, and we're basically saying, as the caption says, then be that person, have those difficult discussions. So one of the things that we put together, if you just go to just below that, it says info tools for information to get vote out, and just click on that.
Okay, yeah.
So if you go to the Rise of Alberta website, they do amazing work. There's all these graphics that if you just scroll down a bit, that help you summarize the arguments for why it's in Albertans' interest to vote for independence, and how to respond to a lot of the common myths and misunderstandings about why some people say it can't happen, or more commonly fears people have and uncertainty people have.
Right. One of the big ones I hear from a lot of people in my audience in particular is the pensions. Like, people who are pensioners, they're getting their their Canadian pension plan. They're afraid that they're gonna lose that pension plan, or even healthcare, things like these.
Yeah, so if you're worried about your pension and it's a Canadian pension plan, you should be more worried about Alberta staying in Canada. And the reason is that, first of all, that's your money, right? Like, you worked, you look at your pay stub. Let's say you're retired. If you go back 10 years ago while you were still working. So I'm speaking to an Albertan now who's 75 years old. There was an amount, you remember, on your pay stub, and it would say CCP. That was your money. It is your money. So your money, it wasn't government money that the government set aside. It's your money. You worked for it, and the government took it and put it into a mandatory pension plan. So your money is sitting in Ottawa. Carney, on a recent trip around the world, told these different governments that he wants to use the $1 trillion or whatever that's in the Canadian pension plan, which isn't his money, and put it on these risky investments, right?
Like collateral. Yeah.
And the other problem with the Canadian pension plan is versus Alberta is that Albertans pay so part of the money you're getting out is the money that other people are putting in. It's almost like a kiting scheme, right? So
Mhm.
when the younger people are working, you retire, they're paying into the fund. So there's money there for you to receive as you're retired. And then as that working person reaches retirement age, there's younger people that are paying in to pay them, right?
Isn't that like
So
literally the definition of a Ponzi scheme?
yeah, kind of.
Paying the old investors with the money coming in from new investors.
Yes. And it works as long as you have more people paying in than taking out.
Yeah.
And in Alberta, because of how productive we are and how profitable so many of the things we do are, and how young our population is, we're paying disproportionately into the Canadian pension plan.
Mhm.
So if Alberta leaves and you're a pensioner in Ontario, you're in trouble. If you're a pensioner in Newfoundland, you're in trouble because those young Albertans that are working hard and have high salaries or high wages because of how hard they work and how productive they are aren't going to be paying in anymore. So the safest thing that could possibly happen is to your pension, if your pension is the Canadian pension plan, is for Alberta independence because the pension plan is going to grow. And in fact, the government has analyzed this and is going to be holding a referendum question on this specific point in addition to independence in October, because the math is so clear that the pension fund will grow faster if it's just an Alberta pension plan. Quebec has its own pension plan. They don't have a CCP in Quebec. They have a Quebec government pension plan. Any province can do that. You can opt out of the Canadian pension plan and have your own provincial pension plan, the equivalent. Alberta is likely moving in that direction. Well, the government has signaled it wants to move in that direction, regardless of what happens with independence. And the reality is, you will be so far better off as a pensioner if you live in Alberta, if either A, the pension plan becomes an Alberta pension plan, because you won't be paying out for all these people in the other provinces, and you'll have a huger pool on the bottom end of the Ponzi scheme to be paying in, and the same will apply. All right, let's deal with one other sub issue there. So we're in the negotiations, the votes to separate, and the federal government says, we say, yeah, the calculation is X amount of dollars is owed to Alberta. Albertans have X amount of dollars in the Canadian pension plan. Cut us a check, right? And we're sitting around the negotiating table. We got to negotiate the terms of this divorce.
Mhm.
And let's say I'm there. And then they say, yeah, we know, and let's just say for argument's sake, it's $200 billion. I have no idea. I'm just making up an arbitrary number. And they say, yeah, well, we're not going to cut you a check. And then I'm going to say, well, guess what? What's Banff National Park worth? What's Jasper worth? What's Waterton worth? What are your 4 military bases worth? We're not going to pay you for them then. We'll call it a day. You see what I'm saying? Like there's not, they lose control of the negotiation because we have territorial sovereignty as soon as we vote, and we want to be fair with them. And if they're not going to be fair with us, then there's a consequence, and it'll be a serious negotiation. So either way, there is certainty around the future entitlement of Albertans who receive pensions will continue to receive them. If it's a corporate pension, it doesn't change. There's lots of people in Alberta or in Canada, who have pensions from, they worked for GM, or they worked for Ford, or they worked for IBM, or they worked for Suncor, or they worked for Imperial Oil. And then they decided in their retirement years to move to Texas.
Mm-hmm. Or Florida, Arizona. There's a number of places where people,
or from Squamish to Newfoundland. They just change their address and their bank information, and they still get their pension.
Yeah.
They may decide to move to England, right? So independence has no negative impact on independent Alberta on pensions. The only impact it will have is to strengthen your pension rights and the size and value of your pension if you are currently in CCP.
So I have a big question for this. I mean, obviously it's for you, but for anyone in Alberta, the independence, APP. There is so much advertising out there that really goes towards the base. It's like what are the most Albertan man in the world.
Man in the world.
Like all of those ads are hilarious.
I'm sure he's
They're
watching
awesome
right now.
Yeah, they're awesome. But when is there going to be a campaign towards normies and people who watch CBC and people who aren't the base of supporters for the Alberta Prosperity Project and independence? What efforts are you guys doing to reach across and win over fence sitters all over the province?
Could you imagine how excited at this very second the political staffers are in Ottawa, hoping that I'm going to detail for you?
Okay, fair enough.
They're like, grab a pen, hit screen record. Is this recorded? Right. So
fair enough.
So let me say this. It started, and we are going to be using techniques and processes and practices that are 100% lawful, that have never been used before in a political campaign in the history of mankind. We are going to win this referendum, and we are going to win it handily. We have a big hill to climb. We have a very difficult challenge in front of us. But, the first thing is we have the truth on our side. We have the truth on our side. And the truth is, if you could just bring up a graphic that we just put out yesterday, I think it is. Which one is it? It's no income taxes. No income taxes. And so Saudi Arabia, no, not that one.
Oh, that
says just below it.
Oh, okay.
No income taxes.
Was...
So Saudi Arabia has the world's largest reserve of oil, or second largest, whatever it is. And their citizens don't pay income taxes.
No, Keith, that's the one you gave me under that.
Oh, sorry. I must have given you a bad link. I'll try it on my end. And in any event, if anybody's listening that can hit my signal, put it in my signal, and I'll push it over. So what the reality is that there's provinces, or there's places around the world that have sufficient resource wealth that their citizens do not have to pay. Income taxes. Okay. And so we did an analysis.
So you're talking about what Trump's talking about, like
how Alberta would compare. And the reality is that here it is. Boom.
Oh, you can just put it in the chat right here in this chat. There's a private chat.
I'm on my War Machine on my right here, so I'm going to have to.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, just send me another email.
System, it's quite the beast. Because this is a really awesome graphic. It just tells such a huge story.
Okay.
So,
and for people to,
here's the reality.
There are countries out there that pay no tax. In fact, there are countries out there like Kuwait and other parts of the Middle East,
where
they
Kuwait,
get dividends,
Qatar, Dubai, other ones where they
citizen.
don't pay any income tax because of their resource wealth. So let me know when that's in your email, and you can put it up on the screen.
Right here.
Here. So just scroll down so you can see the graphic. So this is the ratio of oil wealth per person versus income tax. And the second column is Saudi Arabia, or sorry, Kuwait. The next column beside it is the AUE. The next one is Qatar. The next one is Saudi Arabia. Look where Alberta is.
That's crazy.
I know, this is math. This is arithmetic, as some of the captions say, that this is not some fanciful idea. The reality is that the largest contributor to the gross domestic product of Canada is Alberta. The largest contributor, the largest revenue source of income in trade to Canada is Alberta.
Mhm.
And we send so much of our money, billions and billions, tens and tens of billions of dollars each year to Ottawa. When Alberta's independent, we won't be doing that. And we will also be unconstrained by these deliberate policies by the Carney Liberals, and before that, the Trudeau Liberals, that want to hold Alberta back, that are keeping our resources in the ground, that are creating barriers and red tape to any kind of development, not just oil and gas, but resource development, processing, value adding. And Albertans have had enough. We know the value of our worth. We know that we can produce this value, and we know how much more value and wealth we can generate if we're unconstrained. And we can be unconstrained because there's a legal pathway to independence. So it's really an exciting time. Now, so you point out rightly and helpfully that, well, wait a minute, Wilson, 30% whatever are going to vote for independence no matter what. And then there's I call them the other 30% at the other end of the continuum that'll never vote for independence. Yeah. Even if you gave them $100,000 and a brand new electric vehicle, and a pride flag, they're not voting for independence ever. And then there's the middle third that will decide the future of Alberta. Mm-hmm. And for the younger ones, the reality is, I was talking to some of my nephews, and they're in their 20s, and I was asking them how much money they make. One of them's an apprentice plumber. Another one operates the thing to de-ice the planes at the airport, that kind of stuff. And I was asking them how much their gross pay is and how much their net pay is. And I said to them, imagine if you got your gross pay, if you actually got paid for the value of your work, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, wow, I'm in. So that's a simple, practical thing. And it's realistic. Remember that chart I put up? This is happening in all these other countries. And they have far higher population and less oil and natural gas than we have. Or anyway, you can see the ratios. We're in great shape. So we've got that. One of the problems we have, people go, oh, well, you're landlocked. Really? Oh, shock. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Einstein, for bringing that to my attention. Let's talk about being landlocked. Well, we're landlocked by policy right now. Yeah. We're landlocked by policy because the federal government is not letting us get our products to market. And we have another province that's saying no. British Columbia is saying no because they don't have any problems. They got so much money. They don't have a property rights crisis. I'm joking. They should be welcoming everything Alberta wants to do through their province to generate revenue for the province of British Columbia, but they're not. They're saying no way. Well, under the Constitution of Canada, a province is not allowed to say no to an interprovincial pipeline, an interprovincial highway, an interprovincial railway, etc. Interprovincial trade is in the exclusive jurisdiction of the federal government. That's part of a fundamental principle of confederation. That's why we exist as a country. And the Carney Liberals come along and say to the EB New Democrats in British Columbia, well, if Alberta wants to put a pipeline through, they're going to have to get your consent, and they're going to have to get First Nations consent. That's not a requirement of our Constitution. There's a requirement to consult with First Nations, but they don't have a veto, unlike provincially with DRIPA. So the reality is that the checks and balances that are intended to ensure that provinces can prosper by moving their goods cross borders are failing because the Carney government is refusing to follow the Constitution and has created this special projects office. If you say enough nice things to Carney, like when you meet him, say, "Oh my goodness, you're much taller than you look on camera," as you look down at him and shake his hand. It makes him feel he's a big man now. He'll say, "Okay, you can have your project. You've appeased the king," being King Carney.
Wow.
Like, what a state we've gotten into. But the point is this, is that under our constitution, a province is not supposed to be allowed to block exports, and the Carney liberals are ignoring the constitution. So as an independent province, as an independent country, Alberta will be able to say to British Columbia, we would like to pay to put a pipeline through your province to the coast. And we will make sure it's environmentally safe, and we will make sure we consult with your First Nations, and we'll do all those things properly, and we'll operate it properly, just like we've demonstrated we can with other existing pipelines. And if the British Columbia government says, no, we're not going to let you ship your goods across our province, well, an independent country of Alberta is not subject to this constraint under the Constitution of Canada. And we can say to British Columbia, well, okay, then we're asking permission to run our goods through your province. You currently export $17 billion worth of goods through Alberta on our roads and through our railways. And that includes pulp and paper, fiber, timber. That includes agricultural products, fruits, wineries, vegetables, wines. That includes mining products, zinc, lead, iron, coal, and other things. That includes all the container traffic that has all the stuff that goes to the Walmarts and Canadian Tire stores from Asia in central Canada. By the way, we have this pipeline that was recently twinned that has our oil and gas in it, that goes to the refinery in Burnaby. And if we turn off the tap in Edmonton, you will be out of fuel for all your cars and trucks and trains and your airport in 4 days. So if you're not going to allow the country of Alberta to ship our goods through your province, then why should we let you do that through ours? So in other words, we will have a negotiating position to enter into a fair, respectful,
reciprocity.
Reciprocity. We have no ability to negotiate. We have the worst of both worlds, because the drafters of the Canadian Constitution anticipated this. And that's why they gave the federal government paramountcy power to override a province. The BC government tried to block the Trans Mountain Pipeline. And the courts all ruled, you can't. The federal government approved it. It's going through. BC, you can't stop it. Carney comes along and says, no, we're changing the rules. We're going to let BC have a veto. So this landlocked argument doesn't hold water. And Alberta is in a phenomenal position to really prosper. We can build our own constitution. We can get rid of this two-tier justice system. We can control immigration. My father immigrated from Scotland in the early 50s. My father-in-law immigrated from Germany in the late 40s. They could not just come to Canada. They had to meet strict requirements to be able to come to this country. They had to be able to demonstrate that they could add value, that they wouldn't be a burden on the system. And we've all seen the reckless, bizarre, dangerous, damaging decisions that Ottawa has made in throwing open and inviting all these people into our country when we have no ability to accommodate them in our schools and our hospitals and within our infrastructure and housing and so on. So an independent Alberta will obviously have control over immigration, and will have the ability to attract immigrants that will provide value and that are excited about achieving a dream of a future and prosperous life. I think one of the demographics, though, Clyde, that you're thinking of when you talk about the challenges that those of us in the independence movement have is it's the seniors who are very comfortable. They're either just about to retire or they are retired, and they're doing pretty good. Their house is paid off, and but what we're going to do with that demographic, among other things, is reassure them that their pension's not only safe, it's going to be better, but to ask them to leave a legacy for their children and, most importantly, their grandchildren. This is the best legacy that someone who has grandchildren who's in Alberta can do, is to vote for independence, because they will be creating an opportunity for prosperity. They will be creating an opportunity for their grandchildren to live their best life, to achieve their potential. So that's a demographic that we're very much alive to. And there's just no good reason to stay. I don't know if you heard about the challenge where I called out Thomas Lukasik for a debate. Did you see that?
Oh,
Where we did
I
like
did.
a white poster.
I did. Is that happening?
I hope so. I mean, if he wants, I'm serious. Like, if he wants, I'll be blindfolded and I'll
And
wear
for the audience,
headphones.
who's Lukasik?
Lukasik is a former politician in Alberta. And he did a petition drive over the summer to have a petition to stay in Canada. And he got the numbers. He got really good numbers. He got 400,000 people that signed the petition to stay in Canada. And so I've said, well, let's have a debate. There's a talk show host here that's middle left. Lukasik's been on his program. And he's an aggressive host. So he'll, try and keep it balanced, and if anything, tilt the scales in favor of Lukasik and his stay in Canada. Right. And he can make the arguments as to why Albertans should vote to stay in Canada, and I'll make the arguments as to why not. I'm prepared to do it blindfolded and with earphones on, playing heavy metal rock. Whatever advantage he feels he needs. So, I don't know.
This might be another point that maybe some people haven't considered. But, I'm moving to Texas. This has been my prerogative for some time, and I'll be gone in the next 6 months or so. And there's a lot of people that are sitting on the fence in Alberta, and they're waiting it out because they're looking at it like, I'm going to wait. I would prefer to stay in Alberta because they're Albertans. They love the culture. They love all of that stuff. But if there is no independence, they're sending me messages and they're saying, Clyde, how can I get down to the US? So this is something that the Remainers or the people on the fence are perhaps not thinking about, just how much of a brain drain there will be in Alberta if the referendum is unsuccessful.
In Canada and Alberta, yes, because a lot of people in other parts of Canada are signaling that if Alberta goes independent, they're coming here, right? So the rest of the country will lose the tremendous amount of revenue that
productivity, just straight up productivity.
Yeah, well, we're just so productive, and we work hard, and we have a culture of our own. That's another thing. Somebody wrote, oh, well, the Quebecois guy, he's like, oh, well, Alberta doesn't have a culture. And I'm like, well, you've obviously never been to Alberta then, and central Canada doesn't understand. We do have a culture. Our culture here is very much of a culture of self-reliance. It comes out of our origins. Our culture is very much tied to the United States. Did you know that Alberta was settled by Americans? Right. And it was the cattlemen that came up after the Civil War, when there was this surplus of cattle that got stuck in Texas and adjoining states, and they didn't know what to do with them. So they drove them up. There's the cowboy movies, right? They drove them up the Great Plains, up through Nebraska and up through, Colorado, and then up into Manitoba, and then up into Alberta and Saskatchewan. So there's a lot of Albertans, the founding families, if you trace their origins, they're Texans, right? That's why they call it Texas of the North. There's historical reasons, but by and large, that's why historically Albertans vote conservative, is because there's a libertarian bend as well, where Albertans want government to stay out of their lives. They want to look after solving problems. They want to take risk and get the reward from making business decisions and being entrepreneurial and so on. They don't believe in nanny state. They don't wake up in the morning and say, what is the government going to do for me today and give me today? They say, I want to try and do these things, and I've got some ambitious goals for the day. Boy, I sure hope the government's not going to get in my way and give me a whole bunch of red tape. So we do have a unique culture. We have a cowboy culture. We have rodeos. We have a sports culture. We have a culture, an outdoors culture. Look at Marty from up north, right? He likes to hunt. He likes to go hiking. He likes to go quadding. He's an Albertan. He likes to work hard. He likes to drive a pickup truck, and it doesn't have to be the newest one, unlike Yukon up north there or whatever, this beautiful Raptor that I'm jealous of.
Yeah.
So we do have a culture
and a scrapping culture. And I want to get onto this because I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about this, but there's been a bit of infighting in the APP as of recent. What's happened with that? Is that settled? What's going on?
Well, I've been around not-for-profit groups and campaigns and initiatives throughout my adult life. I mean, my first bout of dealing with not-for-profit boards was when I was the president of my student society at Douglas College in New Westminster. And, there was infighting. I've seen it in all the different boards and organizations I've been an advisor to as legal counsel in the livestock industry here in Alberta and other groups. I saw it in Ottawa when I was there on the ground representing the Freedom Convoy. Unfortunately, this is normal, right? And it'll ebb and flow. I think we're through it now, but it'll rise up again, and partly because people are very passionate about these things.
Mm.
And when you're passionate about something and you see a path forward and you think someone, regardless of what side you're on the specific sub issue, you think someone's interfering or doing something to compromise the goal, you get vocal about it and you get heated and you get emotional. So those ebbs and flows will continue. But at the end of the day, everybody is focused on the same goal. I think it's not going to become an obstacle in the end. There'll be flare-ups again. I guarantee it. I don't know what it is. I'm not revealing anything. I just know from my experience. I mean, it happened, like I say, most recently with the Freedom Convoy, where there's different factions started and different people started fighting and so on. So it's part of human nature. But what's critical here is the case for independence is so strong, for Alberta independence, the prosperity that we'll bring to our children and our grandchildren, the quality of life, the correcting of the very bad decision-making that's occurred federally with immigration, with the justice system, with the reckless spending, accumulating more debt and deficit than all of the other governments of Canada historically combined, stacked on one another. That is intergenerational debt that's going to continue to drive inflation. They're going to print money and they're going to make the value of your hard-earned dollar less. So when you combine all of these things, and with the dark, slippery slope that Canada's on, people are going to have an increasingly stark choice. I've said many times that I think independence in Alberta is going to be determined by Mark Carney. I think we're going to continue to see him as an empty suit. We're going to continue to see him as a poser. We're going to continue to see him as an eco-evangelist. And more and more Albertans are going to see that the only way forward is independence. And then we have another historical anomaly, which is the United States. And the United States just released on December 5th their new national security strategy. And people should read it, because what the Trump administration is saying in this public document is that they want to move away from transnational state institutions. They don't want to be more aligned with the European Union. They don't want a more powerful World Economic Forum. They don't want a more powerful United Nations. They want nation-to-nation relationships. They want region-to-region relationships. They want relationships with regions and nations that share their values and share their approach to the world and their concerns about trends and things that they're seeing around the world, with mass immigration, with constraints on freedom of speech, of increasing the role of government in every aspect of lives. So the reality is, and Prime Minister Carney set this precedent last September when he unilaterally announced Canada without a vote in the legislature with the parliament, that he would unilaterally recognize the state of Palestine as an independent country. They don't even have a defined border, right? Well, here we have Alberta with a defined border, a defined culture, institutions, infrastructure, booming economy, phenomenal resource wealth, third largest reserves of oil and gas in the world. And it is open, as the Supreme Court of Canada noted in paragraph 155 of the 1998 Supreme Court of Canada decision on succession, the reference case, that if good faith negotiations fail after a successful referendum, it's open for unilateral international recognition. And the Americans have signaled that they believe in people having the right of self-determination, and they believe in democratic processes. So if Alberta completes a lawful vote on independence, it will be open for the American government to immediately decide to recognize the independent country of Alberta.
There's another thing I'd like to add to that. So with the United States making that announcement and saying that they want to have individual deals with nations, this actually lends to what I've been predicting for some time now, that this is going to be the end of the USMCA, or what they call CUSMA in Canada. This is going to be over. It's going to be, forget it. Let's back out of that and let's go to a US-Mexico deal, a US-Canada deal. And if that happens, 80% of the commodities that go into the United States tariff-free is going to be over. That's absolutely going to be done. The US is not going to negotiate some special deal for Canada that no other nation has on the planet at this current stage. Every nation is paying tariffs at some level, and that's to be seen. But if that takes place and Canada is subject to tariffs and no exemptions, the 80% of goods that are exempt in its current standing under the USMCA, that's just going to fuel people in Alberta want to leave faster.
Well, there's a few things there. One is that when Prime Minister Carney made repeated statements, and not just one misquoted a mic, but teleprompter reading, that he has decided that Canada's relationship with the largest economy in the world and our closest geographic neighbor is over. When he announced that, my chin hit the floor. I'm like, is this economic suicide you're advocating?
It feels like
countries around the world that are so far away from that market bend over backwards to get access to it because it's the largest, biggest economy in the world. And we have our prime minister going to microphones and giving the United States the finger. Yeah. This guy's a lunatic. And that's your kid's future he just put down the drain. So Alberta's not going to do that. There's indications that there would be an opportunity to enter into a one-page trade agreement with the United States and the new country of Alberta, which would be zero tariffs both ways. You move your stuff into, and as Senator Kennedy just said in a really good speech a couple days ago from the US, that let the best, manufacturer, the best seller of the best product win, just straight across trade. As we've talked about this before, Clyde, he wants every car that a North American car maker makes made in the United States.
Yep. And that's bad news for Ontario.
Exactly. And then, and it's bad news for Canada, but the amount of economic contribution that the auto industry makes in Canada and in Ontario is dwarfed by the economic contribution that Alberta makes. to Ontario and to Canada and all the transfer payments. So the fact that such an important economic engine of our country, Alberta and Albertans, are treated so badly with such dismissive disdain. You know how the Prime Minister will laugh and mock. He mocks Albertans. It's just it's wild. So
keep doing it though. It's helping you guys. That's a campaign strategy for you, right?
Do it again, man. You know, that's why I said I really honestly believe that whether or not Alberta becomes independent will be determined by Mark Carney. And so far, he is doing a heck of a job. He is really helping the independence movement. It's just terrific. The MOU was an important step, but in time, it doesn't address the immigration problem. It doesn't address the two-tier justice problem. It doesn't address the deficit problem that is multi-generational, created by the reckless, out of control spending and the gross extreme corruption in Ottawa. Like, you know, when speaking that's a topic for a whole show.
That's a whole show.
I know, it's remarkable, you know. It doesn't address so many of the other issues. Yes, it's good that there's a scaling back of a few of the eco-evangelist policies from the Carney and Trudeau Liberals. That's positive for sure. But
it's not enough.
There's so many problems remaining that it doesn't go nearly far enough. It took a little pressure off, but in time, the pressure cooker will regain its steam, its pressure, and I think Albertans it'll just become obvious to more than half of Albertans, a clear majority in October when it's time to vote, that the right thing that they need to do for themselves, for their pensions, for their children, for their grandchildren, is vote in favor of independence, have some serious negotiations with Canada. We can enter into a trade pact with Canada. Alberta will enter into a trade pact with British Columbia. And part of it will be, okay, we're going to let your goods transit our province. And we would like to have our goods transit yours. And can we agree on some of how this would happen? And if they say absolutely not, all our goods goes through your new country without constraint, but you can't put yours through ours. We say, well, actually, no, that's not very fair. Let's have an adult discussion here. That's not fair and balanced and respectful. Let's have a respectful accommodation of both our needs. And we'll be happy to enter into trade arrangements with the rest of Canada. But the reality is that our economies aren't east-west in Alberta. They're north-south, right? Our cattle, our lumber, our minerals, our technology, and then we have a whole service economy. You know, the head of CP Kansas Pacific, you know, Railway is in Calgary. So many companies have relocated to the Calgary International Airport for either manufacturing aircraft components or all of their servicing of their aircrafts. There's so many. Alberta has an incredibly diversified economy, far more than Ontario when you look at the details of it. So it's a great time. I am so excited about 2026. I really think the clouds are lifting, the sun is shining through, and I am no longer going to have to relocate to another country, because that's what it was looking like.
Well, it's an exciting time to be alive. Absolutely. And I've kept you way longer than I thought I was going to.
I looked at the clock and I thought we switch into daylight savings time or something, but that's okay. This is an important discussion, and you have an important audience, and I hope there's some value. Is there anything burning in the super chats we got to deal with?
Well, we'll get to that. I just want to thank you again for coming and for making yourself available for this, especially so close to the holidays. You should be with your family. But well, I mean, actually, I'm sure they're just behind you.
Just before Christmas is an extremely busy time when you're a litigator, because everybody wants certain things advanced before year end. So it's always a super crazy time. So my family's come to learn that that's the reality of what Dad has to do.
Just the way it is. Just the way it is. All right, let's get to a few of these. Trish Prue jumping in there saying Merry Christmas, Clyde and everyone. Great discussion. Merry Christmas. I haven't said that enough yet this year. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas to everyone.
You know, there's the happy holidays. I do say happy holidays because I know there's people celebrating Hanukkah right now too. So if that's something you celebrate, happy Hanukkah as well, and Merry Christmas. Absolutely. Richard jumping in here for $6.99 says, try and take my property. That's when the G, you fill in the last bit yourself, come out. Yeah, well, that's it. People are not, they're not thrilled. They're not thrilled about this, and
They
they're not going
shouldn't
to take
be.
it lying
People
down.
worked really hard in British Columbia to get their homes and to build their businesses. This is just devastating. It's a market economy. You can't have a market without property rights.
No, absolutely not. And I've been preaching that one from the hilltops for some time now. Property rights are paramount to having a market economy. If you can't have contracts and property rights, just nothing. There is no market. It
You
doesn't
need the
exist.
rule of law. You need a
Absolutely.
blindfolded justice that's not evaluating whether they're going to rule in favor of your contract based on your ethnicity, right?
Yeah,
That's
if
why
not,
we've opened a Pandora's box in this country.
it's just going to be patent trolls and people making claims against your property unjustifiably. Yeah, that's just not the world we want to live in. It's not good. We've got Tamara Leach for $13.99 says, great show, gentlemen. Legends, both of you. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Viva Alberta. Yes, long live Alberta. Viva, what is it? Have your Milei always says, Viva la liberté, carajo, which means liberty, damn it. Liberty. That's what we need.
I'm pretty sure Tamara's just hanging out at the house.
Well, I don't think she has a choice there, Keith.
I talked to her earlier today. I said, so I suppose you're just hanging around the house for Christmas. And she said, yeah, very funny. He's under house arrest.
So tomorrow with another one says Keith Wilson is going to be in the history books, not only for what he's already achieved, but for leading the charge for a free and independent Alberta. You absolutely will, Keith. You're going to be.
Thank you both, Tamara. That's high praise. Grateful for that.
Absolutely. We've got Jevon Gendrew. He's jumping in here, member for 15 months. Thank you so much. Says, I would love to have something that proves Alberta is Canada's largest contributor to national income. I have a friend from Ontario who still thinks that Ontario's auto industry overshadows the Alberta's oil. It's just unreal. No, like the auto industry is a big industry, but it pales in comparison.
Just do a basic search. Just to go into any AI tool and say, compare the economic contribution of Alberta's oil and gas industry to the Canadian economy as compared to the contribution from Ontario's automotive sector, and you'll get your answer. But please do me a favor. Tell your friend in Ontario he's right, that it's way more important. Tell him he's right. Yeah, there's no
save yourself the headaches.
We need Ontario. Tell him he's absolutely right, and tell him to write a letter to Carney for me and say, don't worry, Alberta's not separating. Alberta can't survive without our auto industry. Please have that guy tell his friend to do that. That would help us here in Independence. It is the part of the reason we're going to win is that Central Canada is so completely out of touch about Alberta's culture, about our economy, and about the determination of our people, and the fact that we know our value, we know our worth.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm 100% on that page with you. The amount of people that jeer and laugh at the whole thing, they're just, please just keep doing it. Keep doing it.
Keep going.
Because you're getting people that were on the fence to turn around and want to be independent, because nobody likes that kind of behavior. Tamara Leach joining as a member. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. That's awesome. And we've also got Drew Coover for $6.99. You guys all know Drew, who's on the show. Thank you for this, Clyde. Yes. I'm going to have to listen a few times. Keith is a true warrior. And
leave that up there for a second. If you're not following Drew on X, please follow him.
And on YouTube,
he is doing some amazing work. He is exposing things and having the difficult discussions. He does it from a position of experience. He's doing just great work. I try and promote his stuff wherever I can.
As well on YouTube. So yeah, check that out. Make sure you're following him on YouTube, and also make sure there's one other person here that you should be following on YouTube. And of course, that's Keith. You got a channel on YouTube
Yeah.
now.
Well, what happened was I didn't want to do this. I mean, geez, I didn't want to do any of this stuff. I, you know, wanted to be on a beach somewhere or something, but duty calls. And one of the things I realized is there's an appetite and a need to get accurate, authoritative information out about independence, about the legal aspects, about the constitutional aspects. So I relented to some of the people around me that said, you got to set up a YouTube channel. So I now have a YouTube channel. And I've posted my third video, and I'm going to try and do at least a video a week. There's another one coming up that I just recorded to deal with various contemporary issues to help explain what's going on. So that's what that's about. And I also have had set up an Instagram and a Facebook where, because a lot of people that we need to reach and get information to and give them tools aren't on X, where I normally hang out, and are on Instagram, or the older generation is on Facebook. So you'll see my content there just to help get the information more widely distributed.
Perfect. That way people can, yeah, especially when they're having
what's
an
the
argument.
saying? I got to learn the saying when I do it at the end. You're supposed to say, what is it? Like, share, subscribe. Is that what you're supposed to say at the end of a video when you on YouTube?
I tell people to keep on trying.
Oh, there you go. All right. Well, but you're a pro, man. Like, you're way past. I'm just a baby YouTuber here. So please like, share, and subscribe my videos on YouTube.
I actually need to say that more. People keep bugging me. You got to say the things. Okay, I'll say the things.
I have this lecture, finger wag. You got to say this.
Yeah,
3 words.
Oh, we got Scott Hayes here for 279 says, let's go Alberta. It's the only way forward. I tend to agree. And I'm not someone who wants to move to Alberta. Like, I'm pro liberty. Like, I'm across the board pro liberty. If I hear of an independence movement, a movement towards liberty, towards less government, more market economy, I'm all for it. I'd love to be your neighbor. You know what I mean? Because if you're richer and you're my neighbor, you make the whole neighborhood better. I love the idea.
Well, Saskatchewan's, if Alberta goes, I'm really confident Saskatchewan's going to be right behind. Like, is going to be next, because they have so much to offer as well. They have some oil and gas reserves, but they have huge agricultural. They have one of the largest reserves of uranium in the world. They have huge reserves of potash, which is fertilizer to all the farm fields in Iowa and Wisconsin and down on the plains. So there's just so much value between Alberta and Saskatchewan for the North American economy that it's just, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but part of me feels it's inevitable. What we've got here, people are waking up. They're so, we can't have plastic straws and plastic bags.
So, the checkouts, they have the checkout machines, because you have to check yourself out nowadays. They don't, I'm an employee apparently of every one of these places.
Yeah. I always say to the staff, when's the staff meeting again?
Yeah. Right.
I have to come back.
Thing that irritates me every time is that they don't reprogram them for being in Canada. So every time they'll reprogram like how much money or whatever, but every time it says, how many bags would you like? And it just drives me.
Well, so when you're in the US, they ask you that?
No, in Canada, here in Canada, it says at the checkout,
I was down
how many bags? I'm like, can you just not write that in there? Because every time it frustrates me. Like,
well,
there are no bags to have.
I go into a grocery store and they have this round turnstile thing with plastic bags. And when you leave, you can leave with 10 bags because you can put each plastic bag through your finger. If it's the paper bags, you got to hold them like you got twins, 2 little babies, right? And hopefully the bag doesn't tear because there's a pickle jar in the bottom. I just like, what are we doing? It's all virtue signaling, and we go along with it. And these power hungry ideologues in Ottawa, I think part of them laugh at us. They're like, We stopped them from using plastic straws. They're using the paper ones.
Keith, you're old enough to remember that they got rid of the paper bags to save the environment, and they replaced them with
I'm the
plastic
youngest
bags.
of 5 children. So I was the one that had to go shopping with my mom when I was like 6, 7, 8, and 9. Well, my brothers and sisters got to hang out and play outside and play with their friends. And I clearly remember trying to take too many paper bags, going up the concrete steps to our house, and the bag splitting and the pickle jar smashing, and how much trouble I got into. And so, you could only take 1 or 2 bags at a time. This is old, stupid technology. And not only that, everybody would have a bag sock in the pantry or whatever, right? Where you
Yep.
take the old grocery bags and the plastic bags and you put them in. And if the kids need to go down to the swimming pool for swimming lessons, you'd throw one in so they could put their wet swimming trunk in the plastic bag in their backpack.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yep.
use it for all these. We ended up using them 5, 10, 15, 20 times over. It's a brilliant technology, uses less energy, creates less emissions, not caught, one of the reasons, as you were alluding to, we got rid of paper bags was because of concerns about deforestation.
Yeah.
And here we are. It's just incredible. And Canadians say, okay, that's fine. I'll do that. Thank you. Yes. Is there anything else ridiculous you want me to do? And they go, oh, well, now that you bring that up, yeah, there is a few more things we'd like to
Yeah,
make you
it's
do that's
endless.
stupid.
It is endless. Here's a stat that maybe I only heard this week, and it's that in Canada, since they got rid of plastic bags, amputations have gone up by 30%, extremity amputations, because homeless people use them to keep their feet and hands dry.
Yes. You put the plastic bag over you put your sock on, you put the plastic bag on, and then you put your foot back into your running shoe. And now you've basically got a rubber boot.
Yeah, or put your hand in a plastic bag, then put your mitts on
Yeah.
that might get wet
No,
throughout the day.
I can see the connection there.
30%, 30% since they've banned. That's just unbelievable. Anyway, it's morbid. I don't want to keep thinking about it. Yukon Strong with another super chat says, once Alberta is free, independence popularity will explode. I'm worried Ottawa will neuter the Clarity Act in the wake. Will it require referenda to do so? So that's a good question. The Clarity Act, is that something that they can amend in Parliament, or is that something that needs a referendum?
They'll amend it. I'm assuming they're going to do absolutely everything in their power, including a whole bunch of things that aren't in their power, to stop Alberta from becoming independent and moving forward. So, for example, I fully expect that they will make unconstitutional amendments to the Clarity Act. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the Clarity Act in the hierarchy of laws is underneath the Supreme Court of Canada decision. So you got the Supreme Court of Canada decision, 1998 reference case. The Clarity Act is designed to give details on its implementation. And if they put something in the Clarity Act that's inconsistent with the Supreme Court of Canada ruling in the 1998 reference case, it'll have no effect. It'll be unlawful, right? So the Clarity Act is sort of a detail, actually of convenience, because it provides detail. One of the things they'll potentially argue, because I was involved in drafting the petition question, is the Parliament will have to decide after the vote's successful in October of 2026 as to whether the question was sufficiently clear. And they lay out in the Clarity Act the test as to whether or not the question for independence is clear. The question that's on the APP petition is the test. It's the test. So all we did was remove the word and in two, and I don't quite have it in front of me, but it's the actual test from the Clarity Act against what a petition question will be evaluated as to whether it's clear. So we replicated the legal test for clarity. And it's something about, I should really bring it up, and I will, just because it's driving me crazy. If you even Google the question, you'll find it. But yeah, so it's whether or not you want to leave and become an independent state. And we've replicated the question in the petition that is the same as the legal test in the Clarity Act for clarity. So
right. So if they try to challenge it,
they're going to say, well, it's not clear. And it's going to be, well, it's not. They're going to say,
definition of clear.
We've applied the legal test to it and it's not clear. And it's like, it's the same words as the legal test. How can you say it doesn't meet the test? It's all we did was change the word and to, because we were concerned they would make the way the test is phrased. It's a bifurcated question. So to remove the argument, well, you've bifurcated, they could answer yes to A and no to B. We took the and out and replaced it with the word to. So we're anticipating all of these things that they're going to do all kinds of, and remember though, the Supreme Court of Canada anticipated the possibility that the federal government or some party would not actually enter into good faith negotiations as to the terms of the divorce. And they expressly stated that this does not preclude unilateral international recognition. And repeating myself, but importantly and deliberately, what did Prime Minister Carney do in September? He announced that the government of Canada was unilaterally recognizing the independent state, the country of Palestine.
That's right.
He set the precedent for us. So how can he then turn around and complain if after the referendum, the United States of America announces they're going to recognize Alberta as an independent state? And he'll go, well, you can't do that. And they'll say, well, you just did it with Palestine, buddy. And by the way, you scuttled the peace deal for a while, and it took us a while to get those hostages out. Thank you very much. Not helpful, Carney.
And scuttled negotiations with the United States. I mean, just like the timing, everything. It feels so intentional.
Guy's an empty suit, man. He's an empty suit, and he will be the last Prime Minister of Canada as we once know it.
I'm gonna have to agree with you on that 100%. There's the next one. Waniska for 5 says, would Alberta have a bank, central bank, or free market banking like we?
So a couple things there. First of all, I don't know if you've noticed this when you've been down in Texas, but have you been driving around and see a bank and you'll see RBC? Have you noticed that?
RBC?
Yeah. So RBC has branches in Texas.
I didn't see any.
Yeah, we were traveling to Texas years ago and we had our credit cards compromised. And so we went to an RBC branch to get our cards replaced. If you go to the Caribbean, you'll see Scotiabank, you'll see TD Bank. In other words, the chartered banks provide banking services outside of the country of Canada. Alberta will become outside the country of Canada. If you bank with RBC or TD or any of the chartered banks, we will immediately flip over the banking rules to allow that banking system to continue, and any change would be done gradually so it doesn't disrupt. Alberta has its own banks as well. We have Alberta Treasury Branch. We have credit unions that are under provincial law. So it's very easy in the same way that if you're in Phoenix, you can go to a branch of a Canadian bank that you bank with. In Phoenix, you will be able to do that in Edmonton and Calgary. Now, the question of, are we going to have the Bank of Alberta and what currency are we going to adopt? Those are very careful decisions.
Yeah, that's a different kind of
one
bank.
Of the things that's going to be happening in the new year is a new group's going to be forming that is going to bring together financial experts, experts in international relations and military, in business, to prepare a white paper on the details and mechanics of the transition from Alberta as a province in Canada and a confederation to an independent nation state as a free country. It will lay out how every issue will be addressed so that people, when they say, what will happen to my mortgage? Answer, nothing. Will I still be able to have my bank account at Scotiabank? Yes. You know, what's going to happen to my passport? You're going to get a new one. Will there be an embassy in Mexico City that I can go to like I can now with my Canadian passport if I have an issue? Yes, we'll do this really complicated thing called renting office space. And we'll put
Okay.
and we'll put government employees in it. Oh my God. That's the funny thing is people go, well, all the stuff the federal government does. Well, the federal government does really very little things. They don't deliver healthcare. They don't have a hospital. They don't have universities. They don't have schools. They don't even have roads. The Trans-Canada Highway is a provincial highway. It just gets funding because it has the word Trans-Canada on it. So to the extent they do things, we already know that you can do them. It's not like, well, geez, how do you run a passport office? Well, hopefully better than you do. Let's start with that.
Yes.
So but all of those details are going to be completely flushed out in this white paper, so that prepared by experts in all of the appropriate fields, so that Albertans can be confident that the disruption is going to be minimal and the opportunities are going to be tremendous.
When can we expect that?
I don't know yet, because it's still in process and the group's still forming. But I would expect probably by the summer for sure, July, I would think, somewhere around there, to allow people to be prepared carefully. It might be sooner, it might be June, to allow people to review it and information to be distributed on the various issues, so that as the campaigning's going on for the referendum through the summer and into the fall for the vote in October, that people are really clear in their minds as to how exactly this is going to unfold.
Okay, perfect. Rob with Rob, a different Robert this time with a 279 says, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Robert, and Merry Christmas,
Merry
everybody.
Christmas, Robert, to you and your family.
Got Larry jumping in. Larry just became a member. Thank you so much, Larry. Really appreciate that. Merry Christmas. Trish Prue jumping in with another 279. Paper bags were our book covers for school. LOL. Yeah,
that's true. Remember that.
And then we got Robert with another 279. Just as the tip, and only for a minute. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much, my man. That concludes that. Keith, thank you so much for joining me. I know you're a busy guy and you got lots going on, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come chat with me about this so we can get the word out and so we can let more people feel at ease with the ideas that you brought forward and feel a little less at ease about some of the earlier stuff we were talking about. I'll make sure we're going to be popping up, if you didn't catch all of this, and repost this tomorrow morning so people can catch it in its entirety. But then also I'm going to, on the second channel, if you guys aren't subscribed to the second channel, make sure you guys go over there. It's the Do Something Podcast channel. So just type that in, Do Something Podcast. That channel's up. I'll be posting all the little individual bits of this conversation so people can get concise little things. I know it's great. It's a great way to share stuff, especially when people are unsure of information or you're in a conversation. You don't want to just give somebody a link to a 2.5 hour live stream or something like that. You want to give somebody a concise piece of conversation that fits to that one topic that you were talking about. So we make sure that we'll bust that up for you and get those videos out in a timely manner. So make sure you subscribe to the second channel. We can make all that happen for you. One last one here from Larry for $10 says, if Alberta doesn't separate, I'll be heading south to join our Texas oil field family. Great job, guys. I enjoy the show, and thank you, Keith, for everything you and APP are doing for us. Merry Christmas. I actually brought that up earlier, so that's proof for that. So yeah, hopefully you guys are successful in your campaign. You got my support. I'll do what I can to help you get the word out, and that's that for now. I just can't wait to find out what happens in the months to come.
It's going to be an exciting time, and thanks so much for having me on, Clyde. I really appreciate it, and I'm wishing you and your family a Merry Christmas and all the best over the holidays as well.
Absolutely. Stick on the line because I'm just going to end the stream, and then we'll see you guys all in the next one. I'm not sure. It's the holidays, so just make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, and you'll see when we post more videos. Good night, everybody.